You've heard the consistent testimony of Dr. Barnes, Dr. Usinski, and Dr. Alpoven that Xavier Delgado suffered from a chronic subdural hematoma that occurred during birth. And doesn't that just make sense? It explains April 21. It explains September 24, 2009. Their side explains it had to be abuse while saying as to April 21, ignore that, okay? It's irrelevant. It's some event. It's a red herring. Shame on them. So how did the government go so far wrong? How did this happen? Why did we spend the last 2.5 weeks in a jury trial of first complaints? Why has Patti lived with this outrageous accusation for so many years? I think I figured it out during Mr. Liston's closing argument. He described circumstantial evidence. Remember that? He gave you an analogy. He said, this analogy, ladies and gentlemen, is something I learned when I was in law school, my first year of law school. It's my circumstantial evidence explanation. You go to bed one night, and before going to bed, you look out in your yard, apparently your yard's muddy, and you see no snow. You go to sleep. You wake up the next morning, you look outside, and the yard is covered in snow. You didn't see it snowing, but you've seen circumstantial evidence that it must have snowed. That's what he tells you. And essentially, he asks you to apply that circumstantial evidence analogy to this case. Baby was fine when the baby was dropped off at Patti Mock's house. The baby was not fine when the ambulance took him away. Therefore, using the circumstantial evidence that snowed overnight exactly, you must conclude that Patti Mock must have done something. Don't be fooled by the prosecutor's story of the snowy morning that follows the summer night. Because it's not really the prosecution's logic. In fact, I think that his explanation of circumstantial evidence explains where this case went so wrong. Why it is the prosecution made such a horrible mistake of bringing this charge. This is really the logic of the apply. They're saying this. You go to bed one night, and you look out in your backyard, and it's muddy. There's no snow. And Patti Mock is standing. You go to sleep. The next morning, you awaken, and your yard is covered in snow. Patty's still standing there, and she's covered in snow. The world, as far as the eye can see, is covered in snow. The government would not have you believe that that's circumstantial evidence that it snowed. The government would have you believe that that's circumstantial evidence that Patti Mock has been up all night making snow. That's where they went wrong. It's a logic that says that if something bad, something terrible happens in your presence, then you must be at fault for it. If we ever accept for ourselves a government that applies that kind of logic, then lock your doors, stay inside, don't answer if anyone knocks, don't babysit, and don't even think of holding your child or your grandchild. Because if tragedy occurs within your midst, you are to blame. There in the chair of Patti Mock, but for the grace of God, goes Shelley Stanley, or Melissa Delgado, or anyone else who happened to be holding and loving Xavier Delgado when he collapsed. Indeed, Mr. Liston, Patti Mock was the second caretaker holding Xavier when he fell seriously ill for the second time in his short life. And for that, she has been wrongly accused of first-degree murder. Perhaps, Mr. Liston, you are indeed correct. Patti Mock is indeed the unluckiest person in the world. This is my last opportunity to address you. I don't get to speak to you because he has the burden to prove his case beyond a reasonable doubt. Something is failing. But I won't get to respond to what he has to say after this. So as he's speaking, as he's making his arguments in his next address to you, I would ask you respectfully to do so. As he's speaking, since you know I won't be able to respond, can you ask yourselves this question? What would Mr. Mertes say if he did have a chance to stand up here again and speak, what would he be saying in response to what the government said? His Honor, Judge Hoffman will instruct you that faithful performance by you of your duty as jurors is vital to the administration of justice. You are about to be conferred with a truly awesome power. When you retire to that jury room, you've done it many times walking in and out of that door. Make this time different. Breathe in. Take a moment to reflect upon what you're about to do. You're about to do justice. That's what makes our court system the best system on earth. 3 weeks ago, it might not have occurred to you just how greatly your life would be transformed during the next 3 weeks. But today, in this courtroom, you are the court. You are the face of justice. You're the voice of justice. So let your voice be heard. Send a message that might, with time and careful reflection, bring Xavier Delgado's parents some semblance of comfort and peace in the knowledge that violence did not visit their baby boy in his final days of life. Send a message of justice that in this courtroom, on this day, no innocent mother, no innocent grandmother will ever be wrongly convicted of a crime that she absolutely did not commit. Ladies and gentlemen of this jury, thank you.